Welcome to Beyond the Index, a 5-part series focused on what it really takes to win in today's fast-moving B2B world. This series is powered by Dentsu B2B Superpowers Index, the largest global study of B2B buying behavior, drawing on insights from over 16,000 B2B buyers and over 35,000 brand experiences. In each episode, we'll go beyond the data, bringing together experts from across Dentsu and the broader B2B industry to unpack what really matters to buyers right now. I'm Shivani Patel, VP of B2B Client Solutions at Dentsu B2B, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this episode on a topic that's very close to my heart: creativity as the new edge in B2B marketing. Joining me today are two very progressive thinkers and thought leaders in the realm of creativity: Dan Hikuli from LinkedIn and David Holter from Dentsu Creative. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Shivani. Shiv. Wonderful to be here.
And for our viewers and listeners, it would be great if each of you could just introduce yourselves and briefly tell us a bit about your roles.
Yes, well, my name is Daniel. I am the APAC head for LinkedIn's Creative Studio. Creative Studio is basically, simple way to say it is like, it's a red carpet team that kind of gets rolled out to help with our customers to develop good quality strategies on how to win on LinkedIn, essentially. So how to make your ads go further, how to do good quality creative, and provide some creative support where needed for our customers.
And I'm David Holter. I am the recently appointed Chief Practice Officer of Dentsu Creative. We do a whole bunch of different things for a whole bunch of different clients across sectors. We have a phenomenal creative offering. We do a lot of design, and we have a customer experience team. And we have a great PR and earned offering. And I think, we're working very closely with the Dentsu B2B team on a number of accounts. Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to work with you, Holter, and congratulations on the new appointment. Well, guys, I'm really excited to be speaking with you both today. I know each of you have a lot of thoughts on today's topic, so let's get stuck into it. Now, before we do, I just want to give our listeners a bit of a background. This debate around B2B in creativity and B2B marketing, it's been around for as long as I've been in the industry. And as you guys know, traditionally, the thinking has been that because B2B buyers are making these complex, high-stake decisions, marketing and advertising communication needs to be reflective of that. It needs to be appealing to the rational mind and very logical. What I find really interesting is that in our superpowers research, when we asked marketers how they rate their performance for brand distinction, they actually rate themselves quite highly. 71% of them think they're doing a bang-up job. But buyers actually think a little bit differently. 69% of B2B buyers actually think that all marketing communication they see looks and sounds the same. And you guys may have heard this term that we've coined at Dentsu B2B called the sea of sameness. Everything's essentially blending together. So Dan, I want to throw it to you first. Do you think this is a fair judgment on B2B brands and marketers, or do you think we're expecting too much from B2B communications?
You want me to come out swinging? Okay, so look, the sea of sameness is a real thing, and it's a real problem. It's not just in B2B, it's also in B2C, but it is the modus operandi for B2B. I think it's systemic, and it's a symptom of a larger problem that we have within marketing departments in B2B brands. And I think one of the big things is if you think about the main differences between the history of marketing, right, and where I guess B2C marketing has been around long before the internet existed. And with B2C marketing, let's think FMCG, P&G, these kind of companies. Back in the admin days, you didn't have the internet and you didn't have an easy way to measure performance. So what you had to do, you had to optimize yourselves for attitudes. The only way you could really measure your marketing effectiveness was really around focus groups and talking about these things. And that's where you would ask for attitudes to sort of measure that. But as B2B started, if you think about some of the more powerful B2B brands, they're largely internet-based businesses, right? We're thinking about the Salesforces, the ServiceNows, like these SaaS businesses, cybersecurity, cloud, a whole bunch of these different companies. They didn't exist 40 years ago, right? They only existed with the advent and the coming of the internet. And with the internet, we also had this ability to measure behaviors on our platform. And that measuring of behavior allowed us to optimize for efficiencies in marketing, not attitudes. And if you think about some of the platforms that most of the marketing collateral goes out onto now, the Metas, the LinkedIns, the Googles of the world, search, it's all measuring clicks and measuring behaviors. And because you're measuring behaviors, you're able to sort of really narrow down and focus on what customers are doing around your brand, not how they think about your brand. And when that happens, you start to optimize yourself for those efficiencies of driving clicks rather than driving attitudinal behaviors. And we know, if we think about Byron Sharp's How Brands Grow and the history of marketing and what actually works to grow a brand, we know it really sits under the ability to change how consumers really think about the brand itself, that emotional attachment. And this is where creativity drives such a strong play. But the marketing departments in B2B, they're not incentivized to do that, right? They are, if you think about it, a lot of B2B companies start from a piece of innovation. That innovation is usually built by engineering. Those organizations then already have a product that they need to go to market, and they need to find a buyer for it. When they find that buyer, they use salespeople to do that search. Those salespeople then exhaust their existing demand, and then they go, maybe we'll tack on some marketing off the back of that. So then they add in a marketing department on the back, and that marketing department is completely beholden to the budgets of sales. We see this in many of the B2B customers that we talk to, where the CMO is really working very closely with the sales department. That sales department is inherently giving them budget to play with, and so they're optimized to really create sales collateral. And so the focus of B2B marketing teams at the moment is really around becoming a glorified sales organization, an online sales organization to support sales. And if you think about the 4 Ps of marketing, price, place, promotion, and product, the marketing departments in B2B are really in charge of one of those, which is promotion. All the other ones, pricing, placement, and product development, that's not in the ownership of a B2B marketing team. But if you take that and you bring it off to a B2C team, often you find that the marketing department is in charge of being the voice of the customer in the boardroom. And with that means they have influence over pricing, they have influence over placement, they have influence over product and promotions. And actually, if you think of the 4 different levers there of the 4 Ps, the most powerful one is price, the next one is probably placement, and so the last one is really promotions. And so we actually have in B2B marketing teams that don't have really the power to embrace things like creativity and change, or even sometimes brand building, because they're beholden to sales. And of course, their culture within their organization is to optimize for not creativity, but for behaviors and clicks. And so we get that sea of sameness around the content. That was a massive dump. I'm going to pause there for a second because I unloaded on you right there.
I actually have a follow-up question to that, because you are consulting with marketers day in and day out in your role remit. How are you encouraging them to think beyond
just promotion and thinking a bit more? Yeah. Look, I'd love it if B2B marketing CMOs or B2B CMOs actually had more power in the boardroom. So one of the things we sort of really try and encourage is to have senior marketers and CMOs actually learn how to talk the understanding of business, to not optimize their teams for efficiency such as ROI, but to optimize their teams for growth, which really impacts the growth of the business. And a big part of that is actually thinking about marketing as a growth engine, not as a cost engine. And when you think about that, the one thing that really grows is you being able to get people out to change the attitudes of what the people and potential customers think about the brand. That's brand building in another term. And so the idea is tactically, what do? You encourage those B2B marketers to not just think about optimizing for the bottom end of the funnel, but actually embracing the full funnel and doing some more brand building that's going to help raise the visibility of the brand to the rest of the TAM, to help fill that pipeline, but also to change the attitudes of some of these potential customers who might not have thought about you to go on their short list of a B2B purchasing decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I actually read a stat recently that creativity has 20x, as a 20x multiplier, profit multiplier for businesses, which I think kind of ties nicely into my next question. So, Holter, we were chatting last week around Cannes Lion and how they've recently launched dedicated B2B categories. And I think that's fundamentally shifted the conversation from B2B being that dry, rational type communication to a really high impact and creative force. Like if we think about the likes of Workday, their Rockstar campaign, Hewlett Packard did a great job with Wolf Security and Sherwin-Williams, Speak in Colour, just to name a few. From your perspective, why do you think the shift has accelerated so quickly over time, and what do you think has changed in the market that that's made creativity and storytelling matter more in B2B now?
Yeah, I mean, I think your point about Cannes Lion is great. Creative people love an award. So when there's a category worth entering, we'll find some work to put in there. But I think even before that, I think pre-COVID, the godfathers of advertising, Les Binet and Peter Field, did do an IPA study on B2B effectiveness, and surprise, surprise, it yielded pretty similar results to how consumers buy. Let's think about long-term brand building, short-term tactics.
Yep.
Emotion drives a percentage of the decision, which you guys have found in the superpowers research. So I think when they come out and say actually B2B is not that dissimilar to how B2C decisions are made, that was a big moment for the industry. I think we've got the Cannes Lion we mentioned. And then you've got people like big influencers in our marketing community, like Mike Ritson, you mentioned Byron, we've got System One, all these kind of big thinkers who are really quite evidence-based, starting to move the dial in B2B, has really created a shift. And you're right, we have seen some great work from brands, even locally. The work Brent's done at Telstra on their B2B proposition has been phenomenal. And a lot of our clients are, moving. B2B is becoming a huge priority. They want the same level of creativity, that sort of lateral thinking, that emotion. Like, what's the emotion we're trying to elicit from people? They want that in their B2B campaign. So it is shifting and changing fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a huge misconception that B2B purchases are purely rational. There is so much emotion tied to making the wrong decision. Like in consumer marketing, you'd call it the fear of missing out. In B2B, that fear of messing up. So absolutely want to speak to that emotional side and really tell that story and build that trust. So in one of our other sessions, we are talking about brand demand, and I think it's a good forum to talk about it on this episode. Because we often think about creativity as like a creative or a messaging platform, but we know that in B2B, budgets are typically smaller and large brand platforms and campaign ideas may not be as easy to get off the ground. So I want to think about this creativity now in more of a tactical and executional sense. Dan, how do we ensure that creativity extends beyond big ideas and moves downstream to more tactical revenue-based activities? And again, just to add a bit more context around this question, how can we think about creativity outside of just the messaging platform and more around the activation?
Yeah, I think one of the things to understand is that buyers are emotional every single time right down the funnel. They don't go from emotional feeling about a brand to a completely rational feeling about a brand at the bottom end of the funnel. In B2B, of course, the argument is, well, it's not just one consumer, it's the entire buying committee. And actually, with some research that we did with the B2B Institute and with Bain, we actually found that there were two types of buyers inside of buying committee. There was the target buyers and the hidden buyers. And those target buyers are people actually that you are targeting, right? So if you're in B2B, you'd be targeting IT decision makers as an example, your CTOs, your CIOs, these kinds of people. Those people already understand the product you're selling. They're in the category, they understand, what it does, its features and its benefits and things like that. And they often choose outside of brands to consider because they know the industry quite well. They're used to really doing that. The other buyers in that are the hidden buyers. This is finance, it's procurement, it's legal, it's all of these other people who will never use the product. And we call them hidden buyers because they're hidden from your marketing. They're not going to be downloading your white papers. They're not going to be watching your videos. They're not going to be attending your trade show events. What they will be doing will be sitting there. And then when the contract comes across or in the boardroom, they have to sign off a procurement, this new vendor that you've brought on as the CTO as a recommendation, they're going to look at it and go like, you know what? I'm actually not going to sign off on this. I've never heard of this company before. Let's just go with IBM. That's the safe option. Right? And that happens all the time. And what we found was over 40% of B2B deals get killed because you can't get that buying committee to agree. But what they're actually doing there is they're making that very emotional part at the bottom end of the funnel. When they've got the pen in their hand to sign off on it, they're actually going, well, let's think about risk in the business. The idea of me taking on this vendor is, are they going to be a risk to our growth? Are they going to be a risk to our longevity of our business? Are they going to be a risk to any of our technology integrations? A whole bunch of these different things. And procurement, legal, finance, that's their job. Their job is to assess risk. It's a very, very emotional and rational, but very, very emotional way they make a lot of decisions. So the idea that you are creating content that is going to be completely rational to them is not enough. You actually have to appeal to that risk metrics. And I think you mentioned something before about fear of missing out and fear of making a mistake and things like that. These are very, very rational, very, very emotional drivers of decision making within a buying committee, whether you're a target buyer or a hidden buyer. So The idea is, one, to think about, as we move down the funnel, don't think about it as like emotion at the top and rational at the bottom. In fact, just think about it as like everything has an emotional play. And you can think about some behavioral biases in your creative, right? The fear of missing out. You can think about, the power of free and some of these other biases there that can really drive better quality conversions, but are emotional decisions that come straight from the heart for a lot of people. So that's one, I would definitely say, to bring some of that sort of top level thinking and creativity down the bottom. You have to be very creative about how you deliver some of that stuff. The other one I would add is we traditionally think of formats. There are some formats that drive better bottom funnel conversions and clicks, and we tend to think of them in things like white papers or lead gen forms and these kinds of things. But one thing we're finding actually is video. It's a very, very good bottom funnel driver as well. You may not get the regular cadence of engagement that you get from a static ad or something like that, but the watch time is very convincing. And the idea of using those videos very effectively at the bottom end of the funnel can be very, very powerful in driving convincing a potential vendor to think about you as a customer. So yes, I think these are a couple of ways that you can actually make sure that creativity is part of that conversation.
Yeah, I remember we worked with a client, Mimecast. This was about 5 years ago now, off the back of COVID. And it's at a time where, there are so many cyber attacks happening. They're an endpoint SaaS security service, essentially. And we needed to come up with a really creative way to essentially get them attention in the LinkedIn platform. And so we worked with their design team to come up with this really cool vertical video format. And you're like scrolling, and it's like a 3D almost. Like
nice.
Their
nice.
character was called Human Error. And you're scrolling through, and this guy is like knocking on this glass, and he's like pushing through, and it's almost like he's coming through the mobile. And we actually activated that with a demand gen campaign, and it drove them like 200% more leads. So.
Google recently did one in ANZ where they were pushing their large customer sort of Google Ads sort of place. And they were really sort of giving out, they did the power of free a little bit, where they were really pushing for free ad revenue that you could run if you signed up to them. But they used, I don't know if you guys saw this, the ball haircuts with Sharon from Kath and Kim. Yep. Right, and so a couple of ways they really did this. Right, they had the top funnel brand campaign where they got they got Magda Szubanski to sort of involve herself in that and the creatives there. They moved down to some thought leadership and some funnels pages where they were getting people like my team member Robin to actually, they photoshopped his LinkedIn profile with the bowl haircut in there, and they ran it to a whole bunch of different people, to nodes of influence basically, to share the content out there as well. And then they used the same creative imagery and the same character at the bottom end funnel with their lead gen forms, and they were driving that too. So you could clearly see it was a total full funnel campaign. Very successful for them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because in B2B you'll often find that the top of funnel activity is very different to, like the messaging is very different to what's actually happening at the bottom of the funnel. Holter, from a DC perspective, you work with a few B2B clients with leaner budgets, presumably, than their B2C counterparts. How do you and your team navigate those conversations on how to think creatively with a leaner budget?
Yeah, I think one thing I was just going to build on what you're saying is B2B brands who've really got their codes sorted out can drive a lot of effectiveness and get more out of their money. So to your point around the bowl cuts, a distinctive asset of sorts through a campaign that really works really hard. We all remember the sort of Intel Pong at the end of their ads. Like, there's all these distinctive assets floating in and around B2B. And I think the first step any marketer would do, as Ritson would sort of tell them, as we channel our inner Ritson, is get your codes right. Two plus a logo, whatever it is, just to make sure you get the attribution for your work as a starting point. I think that's a key part of effectiveness. As you say, it doesn't matter how big your budget is, how small your budget is, do they know it's you? Are they really clear that it's your brand, and is it easily recognizable? So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing we have a lot of success in is just little tests. Let's just try a little beta, a little pilot, take a little area, a little sector into the market with one channel, could be LinkedIn, a couple of channels with a bit of owned experience as well, and just prove our worth. Prove that this more persuasive message is working, prove this offer is going to resonate, and then scale from there. And I think that takes a lot of the risk out for a lot of marketers if they are trying new things. So biting off a little piece and doing a test with really robust measurement can be a good way to sort of increase budgets over time, as opposed to trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah, that's really good.
There's an interesting, speaking of Ritson, there's sometimes we B2B marketers want to try and do both with a single piece of creative, right? They want to do brand building and short at the same time. They want to have a nice video with a strong CTA at the bottom and that kind of thing. And I think he's obviously cautioned that while possible, most of that type of creative becomes mud, he calls it, right? So basically, but if you think about it, the consumer doesn't care if it's a brand ad or a lead gen ad. They're not looking at that going, you know what, I'm ready to buy right now, but you're serving me brand ads, so I'm not going to convert from this. A consumer will convert when they're ready. They have all the power and the control. You just have to be there present when it happens, right? So they'll buy, a good brand ad should drive conversions. Like if it's very good and you've hit the customer at the right place at the right time when they're ready to go and the buying community is convinced, that brand ad will drive conversions. And so the idea that you should only be measuring brand awareness or something off that brand campaign is just very limiting as well. The idea is quality ads, quality creative will always drive conversions. It just might be at different rates depending on seasonality or just depending on when the customer is ready to buy. And we can't predict that, so we just have to be present with both long and short every time it's on.
All right, so I want to shift gears slightly. It wouldn't be a marketing conversation if we weren't talking about AI. We've spoken about B2B creativity really starting to have its moment. And what is really interesting is that AI is coming into the picture at the same time. So just as creativity is being pushed more in the B2B industry, AI is entering the picture and promising marketing and brand teams more productivity, scale, and efficiency. And that's raising this interesting tension. We dive deeper into this in our AI episode, but there is an argument that AI is making content cheap, and cheap content creates noise. So I'm keen to get both of your takes on this. In a B2B context, how do you see AI impacting creativity, and do you think it's more of an enabler, or is it a risk to, or does it risk complacency and potentially erode buyer trust?
David, you want to start? So we're seeing a lot of benefits of AI early in the process and later in the process. And the other thing we're getting a lot of briefs on at the moment in and around AI is how to B2B brands market their AI propositions. And that's a completely different space. Brands like, Microsoft, MYOB and others are bringing AI products and agentic services to market. So how are they being positioned? How do we talk about it in a really human way? And that's a sort of fascinating space that a lot of brands, as you mentioned before, whether it's technology or banking, are bringing AI services to their B2B propositions. How do we make them distinctive and stand out and as compelling as we can?
It's funny on that point. I was in a consulting session with a large US-based company, tech company, B2B tech company. And their marketing team there, we were discussing their adoption of AI into their products and the usage of AI. And we asked them, what does the product do? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the marketers couldn't answer that question, mm-hmm. yet they're in charge of trying to think about what the position is going to be and everything else. And actually, that is a systemic problem that we are often seeing right now, which is that the marketing team is not involved in much of the product conversations. They're not really across the new AI products that are rolling out at a massive, fast pace across these tech industries. And what's actually happening then is that they don't have time to do much strategy, positioning, listening to customer feedback. So what they're doing instead is to just have their marketing play is just brand plus we're in AI, or we're doing AI, or we're an AI company. And when you have those two things, there is nothing there that's really telling you anything else that's different, contributes to the sea of sameness that's rising, right? And then what we're saying right now is there is an evolution now. The hype cycle around AI is dying down. Everybody is an AI company now, we get that, right? So the idea of you doing your marketing of just like we're in AI, doing agentic AI, who cares? Right? Actually, what you need to understand is what is the user case? And so the asking here is like, your marketing really has to focus on it being a much stronger user case for how you actually real world application of that AI system or that AI tool or that agent is actually benefiting the customer in ways. Where are your case studies? Where are your endorsements and testimonials? Where is the actual, progressive ways that you're using it? And the other thing it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine, but the other thing I don't like about the positioning of AI is that it's often in marketing positioned as being innovation, right? We're being a very innovative company because we're embracing AI. But I think the jury's out on whether or not AI is actually good for innovation. It's a productivity tool. It's used for quality productivity. And the best way to use AI today is to make everything that you're doing more faster and efficient and make it far more productive. And I think if you go to market on productivity rather than innovation, you can easily defend that product play much better than you can if you just go with talking about innovation. Because I don't think there's still a lot of evidence yet around innovation. And I'll give you an example of this. So I created an agent, and the agent was supposed to crawl the Effies, crawl all the Callan Award winners, and then you would plug it into a brief, and then the agent would like pull from, Dove's Real Beauty campaign or the Cadbury Gorilla or something like that, and then create it for your brief and go like, here's your version of that campaign, right? Award-winning campaigns. And it did do it a couple of times, right? That you go, oh, okay, I could see this could be workable, but you still needed a human editor and intervention in there. But most of the time, it couldn't do anything other than replicate or copy what humans had already created in terms of those campaigns. It was unable to innovate. It was unable to take something and think outside of the box that you've given it. And that's where humans need to be really, really, like where the value of humans are. And when we think about what that would mean in terms of employment and talent and the future of work, right? Is AI coming for our jobs? I don't think it is. I think it's definitely going to make our teams far more productive, and some of that stuff can be automated. But I think if you're a senior marketer that's been in the business for 10 plus years, whatever it is, that inherent ability to think outside the box creatively, there is no AI tool that can do that right now. So your job is safe until it can do that, right? But at the end of the day there's still going to be a massive need for you to think creatively, because the tool of AI is just good for productivity, not for innovation. I'll add one more point, because again, I'm talking too much, so I apologize. But you mentioned the flood of AI slop that's going to be coming into the market and the risk there. Again, that's going to contribute to the rise of the sea of sameness as well that we see in the problem. And already, to the point you guys have already said, like System 1 came out and said like over 70% of B2B marketing is like 1 star or less ranked in terms of it, right? And so the problem we've got right now is it's going to contribute to more and more. And the debate we have, and we even see this in the LinkedIn feed, the debate we have is this AI or not? And the big concern against our members and consumers is like, oh, it's AI content, therefore I trust it less. But I think that's a temporary problem. I think what's going to happen in the future is the AI tools is going to get much, much better in productivity and creativity. It's going to be able to replicate human creativity much better, maybe not on the innovation side, but definitely in the look and the feel of the creative, on the quality side. And when it does that, I don't think you will be able to tell if an ad is AI created or not created. And therefore the debate about whether or not I trust this ad or not is going to go away. And you will start to trust AI generated ads a lot more. But it still needs that human element to drive the creativity so that you stand out from the AI slop in the sea of sameness. So if you can combine AI as a good productivity tool or on the quality side, but use your humans to come up with the cool idea that AI tool can create, you're on a winning play there.
Yeah, 100%.
There's something to be said about that, because the algorithm only knows what it knows, right? It's learning what it's taking from data, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it has its limitations, and there's only so much that it can do. And I think having that level of human oversight actually going into the work adds that level of empathy and emotions that AI can't replicate right now. Yeah, hopefully not in the future. The next question that I've got is a little bit, I think, Dan, you were saying it's a bit same.
The question?
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going. Let's see.
So in the superpowers, like the overarching theme from this year's report is that notion of trust. Globally, buyers want to feel safe when they're signing a contract with a brand, and that obviously is built with a level of trust in the brand. So Ritson prophesized back in 2024 that more automation was coming for marketing functions, and AI is slowly taking over. With marketing teams becoming leaner, there's obviously more pressure or more reliance on AI rather to help with, again, productivity. So how do you see marketers using AI in a way that enhances creativity with leaner resources rather in a way that erodes trust?
Do you want to start? I'm talking too much, so.
How do I see AI, marketers using AI?
How can we use AI responsibly and in a way that, I think I need to reframe the question.
I have an answer.
Go.
Go on.
So you mentioned Ritson, and one of the things he's working with Evidenza at the moment is this ability for us to scale planning. So at the moment, CMOs are creating marketing plans and they get kind of one shot at it, right? And they don't have this ability to do any pre-testing. Now, if you use synthetic data with synthetic TAM and you're creating marketing plans, you could potentially create thousands and tens of thousands of different marketing plans all at once and run all of those, and then do that iteration, test it to see which one would work. So right now, a lot of marketing is all eggs in one basket. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm using some data I've got to give me the influence, but my marketing plan, I get one shot at marketing planning. So it's got nothing to do with creativity. It's got nothing to do with synthetic market research, but it actually has a lot to do with synthetic testing of the marketing plan itself. And I do think that is going to be coming in. That's going to take a lot of the legwork out of a CMO to hang their hat on a specific direction to take the brand. Whether your position is correct, whether your targeting is correct, these kinds of things, you can now start to test with synthetic AI moving forward. I think that's going to be very, very exciting. It's going to make us far more productive. It's also going to be able to allow us to be more confident in the boardroom about what we're doing, right? Because we're now going to have this reams of like rich data about like we ran 10,000 tests of different types of marketing plans. We took your position, we ran that, it didn't work or outperform compared to this one. So we're going to double down or take the elements of this marketing plan and this marketing plan, and we're going to maximize the marketing plans as quality as we can. Saving costs, but also increase the quality of output and input from the consumers. So I think that's a really exciting new frontier. And I do think the work that Evidenza has done around synthetic research is very compelling as well, right? So the idea that you can, in the past you would have to use a Nielsen or a Kantar or something to sort of do these qualitative surveys, interview real CMOs. Nowadays, you can just create those audiences and they never get tired. You can ask them an unlimited number of questions. You can explore it with an unlimited number of people or synthetic AI versions of those people. And I think that tool even allows you to like literally ask the AI a question to drill down on why their responses are these kinds of things, like a real person would. Mm. So there's very, very compelling growth in using synthetic research and synthetic AI. And I think that's going to massively disrupt marketing research. Because in the past, B2B, or even not even in the past, but even now, most B2B marketing teams don't have a market research budget. They don't listen to the customer much, right? They listen to sales. And so this is going to give them the ability at a low cost to be able to listen a little bit better into the qualitative analysis of where their marketing can go in their campaigns. And it's going to allow them to be better informed to create better creative. So I think that's a very exciting frontier.
Yeah, nice. Do you think, just as, again, like a tag-on question to this and more out of curiosity, do you think there is a limitation to synthetic data again? Like how it's actually learning?
Yes, to your point, like the training set and everything. Look, it's trained on human responses. And actually, we know that the human responses in qualitative research is also unreliable. So you would then guess that synthetic research is fairly unreliable as well, right? But not more unreliable than human responses, right? So sometimes people just take surveys just to get the free voucher at the end, or they take the surveys because, they've got some time or they've been forced to do it. And so they just multiple choice, hit. So you never really can rely even on the human responses of qualitative research. So even if the synthetic AI isn't 100% accurate, and I think that's the big barrier, is actually, does your board trust the responses, right? Do the other humans trust the AI responses? The question should also be, well, does those other humans actually trust the human responses out of that qualitative research? Which I think we already know that qualitative research is very, very fluffy in terms of like whether or not it's deep down in accuracy. And I think this is marketing 101, right? Like, I don't know what works, but I kind of am willing to back myself and go like, this is what I think could work based on what I understand. And you have to be able to have that bravery to take that gamble to run that sort of test. I don't think synthetic AI is going to change that conversation much, but I think the big hurdle will have to be is like, do other humans trust the research that you're doing synthetically? And I think once you can get over that hurdle, then I think, yes, I think we'll have a nice new frontier of using AI as a research tool.
Alter, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, probably down the other end of the marketing spectrum when it comes to AI, it's once you're onto a good thing, like you've got a great creative platform, you've got your codes, how do you use AI to create the versions, iterations of the campaign to keep it fresh? I think we've seen, I feel like this is the Mark Ritson podcast. But,
it does a bit like that.
But we've seen great campaigns, like should have gone to Specsavers, these sort of big platforms, we do a lot of work with the Iconic and they've got your looking platform, these big platforms that have got their codes, they've got their established idea. AI is going to open up a whole new train of executions that the old production budgets would never have allowed. And I think that's a really exciting frontier. On the other end of the spectrum is, we can squeeze more out of this effective idea and make it more relevant to more audiences in new ways. So that's, that's a big area.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it. Okay, well, before we wrap up today's episode, I'd love for both of you to share your wisdom with our listeners. For any B2B marketers or brand marketers thinking, I want my brand to stand out, to be more creative, but I need practical advice on where and how to start, what would your guidance be?
You start. Yeah.
Oh, I think the building blocks of any great creative campaign are really clear positioning, absolute clarity around targeting, who we're going after, do we know them really well, what resonates, and as I mentioned before, like what are the codes of the brand, what are the immovable foundations that we're not allowed to play with, and let your creativity go from there. But once those building blocks are in place, I think, you know, it's permission to play and try things and test things and you know, take a leap. It's okay to feel uncomfortable sometimes. I think we've become very accustomed to feeling, you know, certain and lots of confidence in and around all the data that we have access to. But actually, sometimes the ideas that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit sweaty palm. Well, how's my boss going to react to that? So all those sort of different emotional responses to an idea, we'd encourage that, because then you're onto something, you know, that does feel different and does feel potentially unique for your brand or context.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the B2B industry, creativity is often a much stronger conversation. So if we take luxury as a vertical, for example, you have these, heads of creative or a creative director or a creative muse that sits in the board and literally governs what the trend of the brand or the direction of the brand is going to go in the next 12 months with the new fashion line or with the perfumes that we're pushing out. They're really embodying through a human person about what it is. Now, you imagine if we could get a B2B company, an Infosys, an HP, a Wipro, whatever it is, to actually put a head of creative in the board, right? You can't even imagine it. And that's how far we are from embracing creativity compared to some of the other industries that are out there right now. And you think about it, all you need is for one brave CMO to really sort of think about putting in a head of creative in the board and to go, you know what, let's try this position, to your point of positioning, and that's where our point of difference is going to be. We're going to be the creative B2B company right now in this space. I mean, you've seen Colin Fleming out of Salesforce, who's now at ServiceNow, like he really pushed that for Salesforce, and they had the distinctive assets like Astro and the Blue and the Einstein characters. And the data backs it up that they are a market leader, not because they have the best product, they're a market leader because their marketing is much more resonant. It stands out. It's much more prevalent. Like they have a good, strong marketing engine going out there right now. And I think there are a lot of brands in B2B who are starting to embrace this play and starting to understand, creativity is an unlock for growth in our space. It gives us pricing power. It gives us better positioning power. It allows us to actually build assets that we could then build new product lines off the back of, as many B2B companies do, B2C companies do. So I think like there's a lot of opportunities that a lot of B2B marketers haven't realized and haven't really been incentivized to go after. And you do need leadership to make that happen. So I think like that's one of them. I think definitely like that culture shift within a B2B company to go, we're going to put creativity at the forefront and we're going to be brave on this and we're going to back ourselves on this. And I think you'll start to see dividends on that because there's a huge white space to be creative.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get out above the sea of sameness, don't look at your competitors, run your own race and be as creative as possible around it. Speak to your customer, not your competitors, and figure out what you need to do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for B2B companies.
Yeah, nice. Well, Holter and Dan, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you both for sharing your perspectives and insights. And to our listeners, we hope this episode has inspired you and at the very least given you some practical takeaways into how to think more boldly about your B2B marketing. For more insights from our Superpowers report, head to dentsu.com/dentsuB2B/superpowers to download the report and check out the Beyond the Index page to catch the rest of the episodes. See you in the next one.